Hi there everybody, welcome to this movie. What we're going to do here is show you a 60-minute practice race on the 24-hour circuit of the Nordschleife. We're going to chat a bit about the cars, the circuit, the race itself, set up a little bit because I can never help myself, show you a little bit about Motec, hopefully entertain you with a few battles, and generally speaking give you an informative, entertaining and fun 60 minutes. See if we can do that for you. Rfactor 2 itself is at an interesting place in its development, and I've got to say, giving awesome multiplayer experience now, and the depth of this sim just blows me away. I was planning to do this little sort of informational video on top of an AI race that I did a couple of days ago, but I've gotten involved in this Nordschleife 24-hour race project through nords24.net and Frederick Schornstein, who I've known for a couple of years, and I'm in boots and all and going to put a team together and enter in this event. So what the guys do is they get together about once a week to practice and fine-tune the balance of performance model, and this is one of those races. So as we go through, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Rfactor 2 and what it's doing that's unique to other simulation platforms that are out there. One of those things, of course, is weather. You might have just seen the little screen there that showed the weather that we're going to have for this morning's race, starting at about 22 degrees and gradually warming up to about 28, 29 degrees, but moving from clear sky to cloud cover. So the track's going to evolve as we go along, and that makes the racing even more interesting. We can, of course, in this sim have real-world weather. There's a plug-in available that dials you into a weather station anywhere in the world, and you can do this race using a weather station in the middle of the Nordschleife, and if it starts to sprinkle in the Nordschleife, 60 seconds later it's sprinkling in the sim, and there's nothing better. I tell you, it's amazing. You'll have one of your guys with his eyes glued to the weather, keeping you updated, so you know whether you need to pit for wets or what you should be doing before you set out on the next lap. And I tell you what, it really adds an edge to the racing. That's me there in the orange Nissan GTR with the carbon bonnet, Southern Cross proudly displayed on the bonnet, and the checkered plate roof. So the checkered flag, sorry, patterned roof. So it's pretty easy to spot my good self. I've come into this event with a PB, a quali PB of about an 8:minute 39. Everyone was a little bit off their best pace this morning, I think down to temperature, and personally I didn't get a clean lap in quali. So I'm starting right down the back, a little bit out of position, so I'll look to take a bit of advantage while we're on the sprint circuit. We've had the warm-up lap, got a little bit of temp into the tyres, but not much. But if I can get a couple of easy passes on the GP circuit, I will, because they're a little bit harder to find, and I've just managed to get around that 911, and so is Stefan Erksy behind me in the Nissan. I raced with Stefan a couple of times before. We had an amazing battle in the 90-minute race of Mount Panorama last year on race department, and he's a very good driver, but I don't think he's done a lot of practice here in this car on this track, so he's not quite hit his form yet. So I'm out of position. I do plan to get through a few cars in front, but not necessarily in the first half a lap. 115 litres of fuel, tyres are cold, brakes are cold, the car's feeling heavy, the track's cold, and really it's just not a good moment to really start pushing. I've taken very much an endurance racing mentality to this first lap, bearing in mind all those things about temps and fuel loads, etc. And I'm just going to cruise around, avoid mistakes. We can see one guy there just getting a little bit out of shape, out of balance, and costing him dearly at the exit to the GP circuit. But as we all file onto the Nordschleife proper, I'm just very much driving within myself here and just trying to keep the car in one piece, start to bring everything up to temp, start to get a bit of a feel for what the track's doing. The track, of course, evolves. One of the features of Rfactor 2 is called Real Road. And it's not some canned thing where the track just gets more grip. every car that drives over every square centimetre of track leaves rubber, and that's where the grip is. If you've got a bunch of guys driving the same line, off that line, there's no rubber. So it really does depend on where you put the rubber down. So with a bunch of good drivers like this, you've got the rubber in a good place normally. As we take some air over the Flugplatz and start to, the second apex is the key one to really start to get the power down and not need to lift. This part of the track is a very quick bit of track here. As we approach the Swedish cross curve, I won't try to say it in German, but this is always tricky, particularly the first lap. You've got to stay left. It's a downshift from absolute top speed. That black bit's the sticky bit, and there's usually somebody just writes a check there. Their tyres can't cash, and unfortunately today it was Stefan. Close escape from me as we enter the corner. The cars now accelerate again up towards the Adenauer Forest. It's quite a tricky and bumpy braking zone. You've got to sort of take it in 2 bites and position the car beautifully and make sure everything's perpendicular. So easy to get it out of shape, and the Camaro unfortunately does exactly that. And it's right down to just a narrow escape there again, right down to first gear for this tightest part of the exit of the Adenauer Forest. As we head down to the end of the, I call this the park section. I don't know, it just reminds me of a bit of a picnic park, but that's just me. So we depart the Adenauer Forest section of the course with a fast 4th gear left-hander, and then it's down 2 gears into a tight climbing 2nd gear left, sorry, and then 3rd gear, 2nd gear, 1st gear, as we do a very tight and deceptive right-hander here as we start the descent into the Callan Forest. The Chevrolet Corvette GT2 in front is making good pace, but I'm getting the feeling that I might be able to attack him before too long. This descent here is not to be underestimated. That's a double apex right-hander. Difficult braking zone here. You've got to split it into two downshifts, then another downshift, get the car straight for the second one, and then start to get the power on as quickly as you can. If you've got enough brake cooling, you've still got some temp on your side and you can attack here under brakes. Some of the drivers set their brake cooling fairly low, and we're just going to watch here because the Corvette GT2 just gets a little bit sideways. It's quite a tight right-hand, it's a climbing right-hand turn and quite tight, and the car gets very light while you've still got some lock on there, and it's difficult to manage. So I managed just to get the jump on him there and get some momentum and get the car in front. And we're now approaching the fastest section of the valley floor. So it's absolutely flat here as we get some speed up through Little Valley. Now it's flat, but you've really got to be pin perfect here because you get half a foot out of shape, as one of the driver has up here, and it just has such a big flow on impact because very close escape there because the speeds are so high. And by now you're in top gear, near top speed, and we've got Courage Curve. It's a double downshift, back on the gas, holding about 200 kph, back up to 5th gear. Spot the braking marker here for the steel Threk. But really here your mind is just starting to focus on the upcoming carousel. Accelerating hard, but trying to spot your brake marker on this curve. And prepare for the carousel. It's not easy to get this right. Enter too early and it spits you out halfway. Enter too late, it spits you out. So you've just got to get down there. Technique I use to get is focus on the right hand wheels. I want the right hand wheels on the shoulder, and that tends to put everything else where it belongs. So accelerating hard on the exit of the carousel. This is a 4th gear corner, 3rd gear corner, and some brakes. On full fuel it's down to 2nd. On the gas again, bit of air time, dab the brakes, and on to the right. This next 2.5-3 kilometre section from Whipperman to Plant Garden, very technical, very enjoyable. On full fuel and tyres that aren't quite in yet, it's sort of hard to really spot the apex and hit the apex like we will in a lap or two when the fuel levels are down a bit and the track's rubbing in a bit and the tyres are fully in. But very enjoyable, and it's a good gauge to start to see where the car you're chasing or where the car chasing you is at, whether he can hold his line and hold his nerve, or perhaps get a little bit too target focused and be looking at you too much and starting to miss apexes. Now there's a couple of jumps here which are pretty exciting. The first one pretty straightforward. We'll get through this. You can see all the cars here. We're all missing that chicane to a certain extent. This is the first jump here, and it's flat out. Drop 2 gears down to 4th, 3rd, and get on it. And already starting to focus on this next one, which is so hard to get right because there's a bit of an angle. You're taking off at a bit of an angle with a bit of lock as well, and you can see there the 3rd car, Renault, has got itself a little bit out of shape there. And now we're starting to be able to breathe a little bit easier as we approach the final set of curves. This left-hander is called Swallowtail, and it's not to be taken lightly either. It sort of spits you up. Your car gets very light, and I'm using first gear. I run a very long first gear though, and this is the mini carousel. But and then it's a climb up and downshift from 4th to 3rd. Try to get a good apex here. Again, it's spitting you up again. A lot of these corners tend to sort of give you a bit of lift and make the car very light just when you want a bit of grip. But with a clean exit there and an upshift, and we're on to the Dottinger Hoe and on the straight, and heading flat out back up to the GP circuit. So now we'll spend a little bit of time. We'll look at where the pace setters are, where the leaders are. But at any rate, that's lap 1 of 8 out of the way. Hope you're still with us. So as we watch another Nissan with a very nice custom painted skin, and you do that simply in Adobe Photoshop or GIMP, and then import it into the game. So a Nissan GTR GT1, but of course with the balance of performance spec, dueling with another Chevrolet Corvette GT2. So these two cars duke it out for, I think, 4th and 5th, or 3rd and 4th. Might be a good moment to just chat a little bit about the cars and what Frederick Schornstein has done to bring all these ISI GT cars into line with about the performance of an Apex modding GT3 car. He's added a little bit of weight and drag to the Nissan, and the Corvette GT2 stayed about the same. So they produce fairly similar lap times, but they do it through slightly different means. The GTR has got a little bit higher power to weight ratio and more horsepower, 593 horsepower at 7,500 revs, but the Corvette's got 468 horsepower at 4,750 revs, so it is absolutely laden with torque. 725 newton meters of torque in the Corvette, 654 in the Nissan. So they've all retained that very unique flavour. Any of you that's driven the ISI GT cars in their stock form, you know that they've all got their individual flavour, and so despite the balance of performance modifications, they all feel like the same creature. It's just that their lap time has been brought into line. As we ride on board with the Apex modding Z4, give you a bit of a sense of the cockpit ambience of that car. That's in the hands of, I think, Rene Reiterer, and Rene, I hope I've said your name correctly, who actually had pole position for this race, and he's hot in pursuit of, I think, Kristen Michel in the GT2 Corvette. The Z4's 515 horsepower at 8250 RPM and 515 newton meters of torque, so pretty strong in horsepower, pretty strong in torque, similar weight to the Nissan. And as you can see here, as they approach the Sweden Cruise or Swedish Cross, not short of top speed. See how he goes under brakes here. Not spectacular under brakes compared to the Corvette. The Corvette's got strong brakes, but needs the temps managed. We'll stay on board with Rene as he follows Christian up towards the Adnau Forest and the Foxhole. Very easy to get that braking area wrong, but Christian gathers it back in together, and you can see the level of competitiveness amongst these guys, that despite the error, he's not willing to concede track position if he can at all avoid it. So why don't we ride with these couple of top guys through the forest. We'll get on board with Christian to sample the cockpit ambience of the Corvette. Double apex right. We're now on board with Simon Christman, who I believe is running in P4, and he's hot in pursuit of Mick Schliefe in the Nissan. So we've got another look at this Nissan Corvette GT2 battle, and we've got somebody else here in hot pursuit in a Z4. In fact, we can see here as third, fourth, and then fifth come through the carousel that the top five drivers are only separated by a mini gap between them, perhaps 8-10 seconds between the lead group of two and then the chase group of 3 more cars. So it's still quite interesting at the front. You'll also notice that the cars are starting to kiss the apex with a bit more accuracy now. The couple of laps worth of fuel, certainly in the GTR you're burning about 17 litres of fuel per lap. The Corvette's probably slightly less than that, but you've got 25-30 kilos of fuel dropped off. A little bit more rubber on the track. Also, you saw that temperature guide at the beginning, the track's warming up a little bit. And the guys are perhaps pushing a little bit harder as well now. The car's coming to them a little bit in terms of feel and giving them a bit more confidence, and that's letting them feel that they can start to push that little bit more for a competitive position. So lap times will be coming down, and we'll start to see a little bit more, as you see there beautifully through that that mini chicane there and over the first of the 2 jumps. In fact, we're going to ride with Simon Christman here over the second jump, because I'm just amazed at how he executes this. You'll see just the commitment over the second jump. Look at that, straight as a die, flat out, and the Nissan struggling there. That's what I look like every lap. I've just got to find out how Simon does that, and I think Christian Michel's the same. They've just figured out the perfect entry into that jump, and there it's got him a nice clean pass. It's possibly getting him a 1.5 seconds a lap as well, because the next section of track is very, very fast. So yeah, very, very impressive over the jump. So now we're going to ride on board with the AMG SLS for a little while, just to give you a sense of the sounds and the performance and the cockpit ambience of this beast. And to drive, it feels pretty much like you'd expect. A lot of grunt, a lot of power, a lot of torque. You can feel the lump of iron up the front, the big V8 up the front. And yes, any rumours that this vehicle is supplied with a gold chain, a toupee and a open neck shirt, totally incorrect. Not supplied as standard. Coming up shortly, we're going to chat a little bit about Motec. Now, as we ride on board with the 911 GT3 from Apex Modding, just for a moment we'll insert a Motec screenshot. Now, this is the sort of tool you use to sort of work out what you're going to do with every parameter of tuning. Now, we're on the straight here, we're looking at top speed, and this car, it looks like it's just going to just about come close to cracking 300 kph. Now, you want to set, for example, one parameter, top gear. You really want to be maximizing top gear along this long straight, but set it one click too long and along the valley floor, you're not going to be achieving the RPM you want. You're going to lose speed. So there's a bit of a compromise, but you realistically should be bouncing off the limiter as you hit the end of that straight. Given, however, in a 24-hour endurance race, you don't want to break the engine, so you need to be aware of, and there are tools that will help you, such as CarStat 2. You need to be aware of your maximum safe RPM, and you need to set top gear so that you're not continually exceeding the maximum safe RPM. Same with engine oil temp. You've got an optimum engine oil temp and a maximum safe engine oil temp. Every degree above optimum temp is going to take a little bit of, out of engine life, and so is an over rev. So over temp and over rev really are what costs you engine durability. And in a 24-hour race, you need to know what the parameters are. You need to know how you can set your radiators and set your gearing to get the best speed you can, but make sure that the car survives to the end of the race. For example, the setup I was initially using in the Nissan GTR, I was blowing out puffs of smoke out of the exhaust for about a third of the lap, thinking, oh, this is cool, I've got the smallest radiator and therefore I've got less wind resistance. But in fact, by upping the radiator size one click, I lowered the engine temps by about 10 degrees, stopped blowing the smoke, stopped getting the engine warning, and in fact improved my lap time. So there's no point running the thing mega hot and risking an engine failure. Same too with top gear. Added a click to 6th gear and was pulling slightly less revs on the main straight, but still had a better lap time. So we'll run with Mike Friends for a little while here with a beautifully painted Nissan GTR. This is another custom paint job that one of the guys has done, and a very distinctive looking car indeed. Now we're in the early parts of lap 3 here, and I've started to get a little bit interested again in what's happening in my own race. This is René von Dobschwetz, who you might recall had a bit of a spin in Hidden Valley on lap 1, and a sort of a half spin over the second of the two jumps. But René's recovered from that, and he must be a pretty fast guy, because he's managed to recover from that, put some fast laps in, and now he's starting to harry my good self here as we approach the sort of one-third of the lap, one-third of the way through lap 3. Now again in front, lap 3, I'm still looking after the car, looking after the tyres, not doing anything heroic, but certainly making a mental note that this car is now hauling me in. But unless I make a mistake, or unless he's got some amazing top speed, it's going to be very, very awkward for him to attempt to pass. So what I'm going to concentrate on doing now is just keeping it clean, keeping the error rate down, keeping a good rhythm. And if I drive a nice steady pace, or consistent pace, fast but consistent pace, and do it safely, puts a lot of pressure on Rene. He's really got to do something good if he wants to catch me, and as Murray Walker will tell us, catching is one thing and passing is another. As we head down here towards the old mill, and I often find this corner quite tricky. This is the right-hander where I've got to pass early in the lap. It's tight, uphill right-hander, the car's unweighted suddenly at the apex, and you've just got to be ready to counter steer at a moment's notice. And then it's hard acceleration. This left-hander is actually called the Lauder kink, in honour of course, Nicky. And it was in fact on this circuit that Nicky Lauder had his horrendous accident in that famous year where he fought with James Hunt for the World Championship. Now Rene and I do just manage to maintain the status quo over the next lap or two. So we'll move up the grid now and have a look and see what Christian Michel is doing a little bit further on in the battle for P1. And you can see here, in fact, how hard Christian Michel is pushing it to maintain or build his advantage over Rene Reiterer. And we'll get to see. We saw Simon Chrisman over the second jump earlier. Let's see Christian Michel over that second jump. These two guys raced together in many endurance races around the world and have been, excellent. Look at that carbon copy. And they've been multiple championship winners in many international endurance leagues. So these are two of the guys to learn from. And Rene Reiterer put his car on pole. He's no slouch as well. But here we are. We talked about how much Christian Michel is pushing. You can see there the signs. A little bit of dust, a little bit of grass being kicked up as he goes into the mini carousel. And he's clearly, the car's moving around. You can tell from the body language of the car, he's leaving nothing on the table as he tries to assert some kind of a lead over Rene. And there, just coming into picture, we can also see Simon Chrisman as well. So he's now pulled ahead and he's now becoming a part of this lead trio. He's almost crossed the gap, as they would say in cycling terms. He's left the peloton and joined the breakaway. And now, almost off camera, you can see here that Rene has in fact managed to get past my good self, and it happened in the aftermath of a poorly executed flight off the second jump, which I find so hard to get right. And here it is in all its glory. We won't deny Rene his moment of achievement as he executes the pass there, and you can see very sloppy jump from me. Damage is set at 100%, so it's very nerve-wracking when you leave the tarmac and hit the grass, but I just managed to just run along the Armco there and perhaps just lose a little bit of paint, a little bit of sign writing off the car, but no mechanical damage whatsoever. So I live to fight another day, and the roles are reversed. So we're now, as we come towards the end of lap 3, I'm now the pursuer. And what's on my mind now is now that Rene's in clear air, am I going to be able to match it with him, or have I been holding him up to a great extent? So I'm peering through my windshield now and just trying to assess whether or not he's going to start to pull a gap and put me into the shade. We're currently fighting for 6th and 7th place, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, 6th and 7th place we're fighting over. And I'm just peering into the distance and seeing, is he pulling away? Now it also becomes apparent at this stage that I'm actually managing to pull perhaps a couple of seconds margin on Rene around the Grand Prix circuit. And it's a funny old thing that there's so much more room around the Grand Prix circuit. You're not sort of 10 feet from the Armco, you're sort of 30 meters from the Armco, and it just allows you to push that little bit more, work each corner, work each apex and each braking zone that little bit more. And it seems that either I'm managing to do that little bit better on the GP circuit, or my setup's a bit better, or Rene's first lap has taken a bit of a toll on his tyres, and there's a limit to how hard he can push his car on the GP circuit. But you can see here from the rearward facing camera angle from Rene's vehicle that he's certainly not pulling away, much to my relief. So at this stage I kind of regroup, regather my thoughts, and think about starting to push. So nothing incredible happening in the battle at the moment, other than I'm managing to hold or even perhaps catch Rene ever so slightly as we work our way around lap 4. But I have moved to a different camera group to give you just a little bit of a different panorama on this stunning Nordschleife circuit, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more later on as we go down through the Swedish cross and into the second gear right-hand elbow before we accelerate again up to the forest section and the tricky, what I call the tabletop, but whose correct name is actually the Adnau forest. We're going to jump ahead now, cut out quite a bit of the lap. So not a whole lot happened in that battle here, but we're going to take you at the front here. We've now got Simon Quisman, Kristen Michel and Rene Reitra still battling for the podium as they commence lap 5. So what we're doing now is switching to more of a panoramic view of this incredible Nordschleife circuit, and we're just going to let you experience the vista of this whole track and its surrounds. And we'll initially do that watching Simon Chrisman as he leads the race, and he's actually chasing down a lapped car there. Or is it, pardon me, that's Christian Michel. Pardon me, it's Christian Michel leading the race, Simon Chrisman in P2, René Reiter P3. Pardon me. But we're going to show you a different set of camera angles. But before we get deep into that and your experience of those camera angles, we're going to talk in a moment about tyres. Now, it's not easy to summarize the incredibly deep tyre model in Rfactor 2, but I'll just try to give you a little bit of a vignette. Essentially, tyre management starts with setup. You need fairly even tyre wear, which means fairly even tyre temps. This slide here shows you all 4 tyres running at similar average temperatures. If you need to pause and look back, you can. Here we've overlaid lap 3 and lap 4 to see what we did differently, where the tyres were stressed at different points in the lap. But essentially, if the setup is good, over a lap you're going to be generating very similar heat in the front and rear tyres. If you're constantly looking at your car status map and you're seeing one end to the front end, usually the front end, the cars generally out of the box tend to understeer. If the fronts are continually getting sort of pink or orange or yellow and the rears are staying a lovely cool blue colour, essentially you've got understeer, you're lacking in grip at the front end. Now, you've got to address that by addressing the various setup options, which is not the subject of this video. But if you start to move that grip, get a better balance in the grip, you'll bring the car more to a neutral or even slightly oversteery setup. And in fact, the top drivers can tend to manage a bit more oversteer and so not suffer as much from front wear. The wear is generated by temperature and friction. So if they're sliding all the time, if you've got a lot of understeer, you're having to have more steered angle, you're going to generate more heat. Now, as the 2 cars head down to the bottom of the valley, we've got a nice piece of music for you to enjoy while we sit back and take in a very panoramic camera group for the remainder of the lap. So enjoy. So as our seesawing battle takes another turn late in lap 5, I managed to get a repass at Swallowtail. I talked a little bit about tyres, but I'll mention now that René's tyres were in pretty poor shape. He advised after the race. He did do a bit of damage with his travails in lap 1, and that's really given me a chance to attack. The other thing that's given me a good chance to attack, I suspect, is brake temperatures. You've got to manage them. You've got to have your cooling duct set at an appropriate level, and really look at how the brake temps are going over the lap. Some of the drivers here on the straight, for example, some of the drivers will compromise cooling to get just that little bit of extra speed, maybe another kilometre or 2 per hour on the long straights. But that can compromise you in the heavy braking zones, the heaviest of which, of course, is the hairpin on the GP circuit. But down at the bridge at the bottom of the valley near the old mill, the brakes have had some repeated work and are getting into top end of their workable zone as well. There's a slide coming up on brake temps, which you'll see in a moment, and that's available in Motec. It's one of the dozens of slides you can look at in Motec and just see what the brakes are doing. This car, optimum temps are between about 400 and 700 degrees, and in the hairpin getting to about 750. This slide, by the way, is from a different practice race, but the same circuit. But it gives you the idea. The blue graph there at the bottom is showing you the temperature range. It's a very handy tool to help set the car up for maximum performance. So we're going to rejoin the fight at the front end again. Christian Michel in the black and yellow car is leading Simon Christman in the black car, both in the Corvette GT2. Just behind them is still René Reiterer, and closing in on them now is another driver, also called René, in the Z4. Pardon me, Oliver Zirac, also in the BMW Z4. He was actually on the front row in qualifying with position 2, so he's now closing in on this lead 2 car. So as we jump on board with Oliver, sorry about getting your name wrong earlier, Oliver, as he chases down Rene in the first of the two BMW Z4s. This is a good moment to talk about suspension. I think we'll introduce another slide from Motec, one of the dozens of screens that you can observe in Motec, and this particular one looks at suspension frequency. So as well as looking at, for example, ride height, suspension movement, suspension positions, you can look at the actual suspension velocity, and that gives you an idea of, you know, how manic the up and down movement is occurring in your suspension, and whether you need to look at fast bump dampers. And I think the carousel is probably an ideal spot that you can analyze. And that top line there is just showing you suspension velocities. Now if those lines on that graph are getting quite huge, you've got incredibly high velocities occurring in your suspension, and that's the tyre and the rubber vibrating on the road is never really conducive to performance. Now Christian's had a slight moment there, and now being attacked by Oliver. And in fact, a little bit of a tap on the rear guard there looked a bit like those police chase movies from America, where they do that certain maneuver to apprehend an assailant. But it's not done Christian Michel any favours there in the black and yellow car, and he'll now be suffering, I'm sure, a bit of damage to his race. But fortunately, it's only a practice race. But you can see how intense the battle here is as the guys enjoy lap 6 of this 60-minute race. And dare I say it, a lot of this is down to the depth of Rfactor 2 as a simulation. In a lot of other sims, the lead driver gets away, pulls a gap, pulls a bigger gap, pulls a bigger gap, and disappears into the distance. But with Rfactor 2, because you've got to manage tyres, because you've got to look after temps, because you might have different brake settings, different radiator duct settings, your car's performance will evolve over the course of a race, and somebody could set their car up to have a stronger finish than you because his particular setup is managing his tyres particularly well. He's not pushed too hard at the beginning. He's taken more of an endurance racing mentality. And the little duel I had with Rene is a perfect example. For one reason or another, I'm getting fantastic tyre wear with my latest setup changes, and I think at lap 5 I still didn't have any significant tyre wear showing on the tyres on the Nissan, which is quite a pleasing outcome. When you take a look at tyre performance and tyre temperature in Motec, in Rfactor 2 you've actually got 7 points within the tyre where you're looking at temp. You've got the initial surface temperature, which shows you all the little micro manoeuvres and the temperatures that result from what you're doing on the track, as we watch the BMW head onto the long home straight. The lap car there politely moving aside. But those seven points include the core of the rubber, the mid-depth temp, there's 3 of them, and the surface temp, there's 3 of them. So you can really see what's happening on a micro and macro level as you look at the evolution of tyre temperatures over a lap, and make sure that, generally speaking, the core will tell you if you've got a good balance. So as the cars end lap 6 and commence lap 7, you'll notice a couple of the vehicles. We've got one Z4 of Renault Ritra and the Corvette of Simon Chrisman both pit. Now I'm not sure whether that's due to damage, need for tyres or fuel, but Oliver is able to continue on to complete lap 7, and also myself able to continue on and start lap 7. Which in fact, much to my surprise, puts me into second place. The car's holding up well, tyres are good, brakes are good, and Rene's tyres are really past their prime now due to issues on the first lap and their own battle. So I'm able to now, without pushing too much, start to extend a slight gap and consolidate the lead in our little private battle. So we're going to jump ahead now to the end of lap 7. I won't make you sit through lap 7. It's time now to say thank you very, very much. If you've persevered to this length of the video, thank you very much for your patience. I hope you've found something there engaging and enjoyable. I also want to thank all the drivers who participated in this race, and thank Frederick Schornstein for providing the balance performance mod and the organisation. And if you're thinking about getting involved, if you want to take on and learn and tackle the Nordschleife, and perhaps tempted by the massive challenge, possibly the biggest currently within the game, that's a 24-hour race with driver changes on the Nordschleife, get involved. It's all there on the web. It's nords24.net, and you'd be very welcome to come along and give it a try. Thank you. That's me out.